I am so delighted today, listeners, to introduce you to one of my former students who I really haven't gotten to visit with since you graduated from eighth grade. I don't think so. Anyway,
Yeah.
but we're friends on Facebook. And so I followed a little bit of her journey, and I love hearing how God is moving in women's lives. So Ashley has a story to tell, as everyone does. And I'm just honored to give her an opportunity to share whatever she feels like God has laid on her heart to share, and just to get to know her again. So I had Ashley. I had you in eighth grade, right? You weren't
Yeah.
part of my seventh grade years, I don't think.
Yeah.
So I taught language arts for 25 years, give or take. And Ashley was one of my students. And as a teacher, I loved um, helping kids learn to write and to tell a little bit of their story in their words. And I'm guessing that I probably have read several things that you have written, none of which I can remember right now. But I do know that Ashley was a really good student, and I'm excited to catch up with her. So, Ashley, tell us about you.
Yeah. Well, thank you. And I appreciate you reaching out to me. This is so fun. Like such a good way to reconnect.
It
So
is.
let's see. So let me tell you about myself. So yeah, I'm Ashley Pennington. Originally from very small town Newton, Illinois. So born and raised. I'm the oldest of three. My family still lives in Newton. I'm actually in Madison, Indiana, the cutest little historic town in Indiana. We are southeastern Indiana, so you can actually see the Ohio River from my kitchen window. So I live
Okay,
in a
so it's
historic
right
house.
across the street from Louisville, right? Not the
Yes.
street, across the
Yep.
river from
Yep.
Louisville.
Right
Yeah.
across the river. So yeah. So if you ever want to come, we were voted the best town in America. So one of the best towns in America. Like, I mean,
How
it is
exciting.
just amazing. So such great hospitality here. So I've been here for 5 years, happily married for 4 years to my husband, Seth. He was originally from Madison. So when we met in Indianapolis, we met during a work conference, which is so funny. It's like a funny story. He was from Madison, and so we decided, hey, you know what? We have family here. I loved it when I visited, so we moved here. We have our 2.5-year-old son, Jack. I'm in like the toddler
He's
mom era.
adorable.
Thank you. I'm in like the toddler mom era. So much patience right now. And he's teaching me so many things about myself that I never thought possible. And how could you love something that you've only known for 2 years, just like so much. So I love this season of life. And I would be remiss if I did not say about our firstborn, Frank, who is our border collie poodle, our fur child, who made me a mom. Frank is 5 and he is part of the family. My husband and I joke like he's gonna have to outlive all of us because it's Frank. Like Frank's at daycare today. My son Jack is at his daycare. Frank is at doggy daycare. So he's my second child. So
Oh,
so
fun.
yeah, that's us. I've been in mental health care for 15 years. It's
Oh, you have not. Have you
Yes, it was
really?
my first job and I've run with it. I've held a couple different positions. So I have my master's in clinical psychology. So it's so funny. I tell people my last semester of graduate school to get my master's degree, I decided I didn't want to be a therapist. And that was like my whole trajectory was like, I'm going to be a therapist. And then I decided I didn't really want to be a therapist, but I got into it. I worked in residential care for eating disorders for 13 of the last 15 years. And
Oh, wow.
that was my passion. I worked as a therapist and then I worked in admissions. And then most recently within the past 7 years, I've worked in business development for mental health care. And it's such a wonderfully rewarding experience. I get to guide families into a robust continuum of care, residential care centers for teens and their families who struggle with complex mental health issues. So we're in a mental health crisis and our kids need our help. And I think the opportunity with Embark, God laid it on my heart and said, Ashley, I was around, I was in the C-suite, I was around the table, and God, led me to get back boots on the ground and be that direct contact for families. And I haven't looked back. So it's been pretty amazing. God has just been working through me in those conversations. And I love my job. I get to travel. I support our continuum in the Midwest and the Northeast. So I travel around the Midwest. I also help guide families in New York and Connecticut and all the things. So get to give my cell out there to families and just be that beacon of hope for them. So that's been
Okay. So do you work like in person with people, or you?
Yeah, so I typically work remotely. So part of just the way I do the job, I want to be that first point of contact for families. So I give out my personal cell. I have parents reach out and say, they're like, is this Ashley? I got your number from such and such at some hospital. And I'm like, oh yeah, I visited them last week. Like, that's great. And so building relationships with people is really the big part of it. And then for me, the way that I see it is, parents are in this very emotional state of crisis, right? So their kids, they've either been told they need to go away for residential care for 90 days or 4 months, or even, we have programs for a year or 18 months, and they're swallowing that information, and it's so hard. So for me, I let them kind of have that piece, and then I take that logistical piece of, here's the airport you're going to fly into. Here's the location. I've been there. This is the person you're going to see when you come on campus. It's this far away from the airport. So all of those things. So I joke, I'm, putting my son to bed at 8:30 and he's laying on me. And then I'm texting with a family trying to find affordable flights so that they can go out to California for care. And so that's just, for me, it's a passion. It's something that, if I were in their shoes, I would want someone to do that for me. And so, that is just the big part of who I am. Yeah.
So you're kind of a liaison then between the families and where they actually end up receiving the care.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. How helpful would that be?
Yeah. Yeah. It's one of those two. I mean, because the internet, Google, gosh, I get overwhelmed when I look at, if we can't accommodate for their child's needs and I'm trying to figure out placement, I get, completely overwhelmed. And so those relationships that I formed across the country are super helpful to be able to say, hey, I know this person, let me give you their cell number, and they'll reach out. And so it's so nice to have those relationships, because that's what it is. It's all about building relationships to guide people to freedom. That's what Christ did. That's what we do. And so that's kind of the way I look at it. And so it's a love. It's such a love.
I can see that you're passionate about it. And I'm sure that when families are in crisis, well, we know we don't make our best decisions when we're in panic mode.
Yeah.
So working with you, somebody who's calm, who can help them see. Yeah. Wow. That's great. That's great. So let's back up a second.
Yeah.
Where did you end up going to college?
Yeah. So I went to Southern Illinois University in Edwardsville. So I was in Edwardsville for my undergraduate in psychology and then my master's degree in clinical psychology. And then I moved around a little bit. I was in St. Louis for about 6 years, worked in an eating disorder residential, got an opportunity up in Milwaukee. So I was up in Milwaukee for a year. Oh, it was cold. It was too cold for me. And I helped with the startup up there. And then, it's so funny. Prior to this role with Embark Behavioral Health, I was with a company called Selah House, which is a Christian eating disorder facility in Indiana. And I was walking out of church one day. I was in Milwaukee walking out of church, and a dear, dear friend of mine who I've known for a long time, who it's so funny. I follow her. Like, we joke. I'm like, wherever Michelle goes, I kind of follow suit. And she was my boss. Previously, she'd reached out to me about a business development marketing position for Selah. And I took it, and that was when I started to dip my toe into the business side. And then she left and came over to Embark. And, it was just one of those, I was like, what is this Embark? And she said, I'm hiring. And I was one of her first hires over here. So
How
we joke, I'm like,
exciting.
I kind of wherever Michelle goes, I follow her.
Okay, so you have not been afraid to go from place to place.
No, that is, yeah, that's one of those things for me. I just, it is interesting. Before this job, I had only been on a plane once in my entire life. And so
Wow.
to think about it, for me too, it's one of those where I'm like, you just do it. Like you just figure it out and you go. When I train new hires in this role that are, and I see myself in that role of like, what do I do? Where do I go? How do I rent a car? All those things. I see myself and I'm like, you just do it. You go about it. You Google it, if you're like, hey, how do I do this? Where do I go in this airport? And it's one of those where you just start doing it and you just become desensitized. You're just like, this is the job. This is where I go. And so most recently being in the streets of Manhattan, New York by myself has been kind of that confidence boost of, hey, you know what? If I can do this, throw anything at me, God. I can do it.
So I love practicing the thought, I can figure it out
Yeah.
and I can do hard things.
Yes.
And everything is rigged in my favor.
Yes. Yes.
All that stuff. I love practicing that. And so you have built a lot of trust along the way that
Yes.
that you can trust yourself, that you are able to figure things out.
Mm-hmm.
And look how God is honoring that.
He really is. And I think, honestly, I think a big part of it was about 5 years ago when I just surrendered myself to Christ when I became
How did
sober.
that happen?
Yeah.
How'd
So
that
when
happen?
I became sober from alcohol, it's been waking up with clear eyes and the most grateful heart. I mean, it is truly such, I'm so grateful. But I think prior to that, and I'm someone who struggles. I mean, you the way I'm talking, you probably wouldn't know it, but I struggle dearly with high functioning anxiety. I am like, I have to, I have to be on the go. My brain is working on the next thing while I'm in something. And
So it's hard for you to be
so
present.
it really is. And that's part of motherhood now, of just like, okay, God, I like cram so many things into my 8 hour day so that I can be mom for, whenever Jack gets home at 4:30 to bed. And my job has honored that, which has been beautiful. But I think, yeah, when I surrendered myself, 5 years ago, when I got sober, it's been such like that. I just tell myself, be still, be still. You don't have to be in control. You're not in control. And there's freedom to that. Like there's so much freedom to that when I'm able to stop and say, Ashley, just be still. No, there's a reason. God is working through you. There's a reason why you're here, especially when you missed your connecting flight or you're late getting home or you're like, this isn't what was supposed to happen. I didn't plan this. And I tell myself to be still, gosh, multiple times a day, just because that is what helps me. Like, okay, I'm in the word. God, I see you. I know you're working through me. Let's do this. Okay, I got this kind of thing. So yeah, that's kind of the way it has happened.
Okay. So did you get into the mental health field because you had anxiety?
No. So you know what? It's so funny. When I was in about fourth or fifth grade, I went to our library and I picked up a Sigmund Freud book, which was, if you've ever read Sigmund
Are
Freud, it's
you
like,
serious? Or was it one of those who is little
yes.
biographies?
Oh, I don't even know if I understood it. Like it was one of those I like
Not your typical fourth grade reading
right.
subject.
Yeah. It was like, I remember it like it was so old, like it didn't even have a cover on it. And I was like, I want to learn about this. And I had it mixed up for the longest time. I remember like doing college essays and I remember saying psychiatry. And I remember in high school, I think it was Mrs. Walker. She was like, actually what you want to do is psychology. And it was like, oh, because if med school and all those things. And I was like, oh yeah, that's what I want to do. And so that I think I just, it was a passion for me. And I also, just in kind of society and just looking at depression, anxiety, suicide, for me, I struggled significantly as a teenager with all of those things. And it's so interesting, you asking about that. And I look back and I think, wow, that might have been the catalyst to where I am here, right now, because I did, as a teen, I really, really struggled with comparison and body image issues and just disordered eating and just this keeping up. Like I have to keep up with everything else and everyone else around me. And now at 34 years old, I'm literally like, I'm not doing that anymore. Like that is not healthy. And I don't know why I am doing this. And so just that's kind of the season I'm in now. So I think God was working through me then, and I didn't even realize it, to be honest. Yeah.
Yeah. And wow, who better to help someone else than someone who has walked the path
Yeah. Yeah.
and figured out how to navigate it.
Trying.
Oh, wow.
I every day. Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit, if you don't mind,
Yeah.
let's talk a little bit about disordered eating,
Yeah.
because I'm definitely not anorexic,
Yeah.
not bulimic, but I think there's been times in my life where I definitely have had wacky ideas about eating. And I've
Mm-hmm.
been on all the different weirdo kind of diets
Yeah.
and all that. So just let's just talk about that.
Yeah. 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 I think, for women especially, so I don't want to I don't want to stereotype or anything or generalize, but just talking, woman to woman. Obviously, I don't know the other side of things. It is, society has perpetuated us to be a certain way, right? If it's, the pendulum has swung in so many different directions. Like, we look way, way far back in history, and it was like, the whiter your skin, the bigger you are, the more you are seen, right? And then the pendulum swings the other way, where we're like skinny, 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 and it's like, if you're a size 00, but I think there's a point where there's never enough. We always, I remember working with clients in particular to say, if I just get to this weight, and I remember looking at them and saying, what if you do get to that weight? What's going to happen? Right. And it became this obsession. And I think for me, I got to that point of, if I get to this weight, then I'll feel better. And I got to that weight, and then it was like, oh, but if I got there, then I could lose 5 more. And if I get there, then and so the interesting thing about society is it's glamorized, right? If somebody loses weight, they're like, oh, look at you. And so I don't want to get too far biologically, but it's like your brain releases dopamine. That feels good. And so it's like the feel good neurotransmitter. And so you're like, well, I'm going to continue to lose. And then it gets to this point where it's like, oh, but that's too much. And you're just like scratching your head, like, well, what do you mean that's too much? No, yesterday or 5 pounds, 10, 5, 10, 15 pounds ago, that was great.
You all
And
loved it.
too much, right? Yeah. And so I remember working with clients that would say, why is it now too much? And I think it all goes back to the function of the behavior. So the why behind it. When we think about, I look at it and I'm like, there's always a reason why we're losing weight, or we're gambling, or we're drinking, or we're compulsively shopping. I am a compulsive Amazon shopper. It's like in my DNA. It's so easy, there's a function behind it. It's like, okay, what do I need right now? Okay, wait a minute. I don't need that right now. But I think when, specifically for me, and then when I talk to parents, I'm like, there's a function behind this acting out that you're talking about. What needs need to be met that aren't getting met? And I think for me, I had low self-esteem. I had very low self-esteem. I had these, well, I still do. I mean, they rear their ugly head, right? These negative core beliefs of that have happened, that have kind of perpetuated this cycle in my relationships of, you're a problem, you're all of these different things. And I get sucked into it. And so for me, it's like, okay, I don't want to think about that. So I'm going to think about what I'm putting in my body or what I'm taking out of my body, or I'm good, drinking, I don't want to think about those negative emotions. And so I'm going to do this because that feels better. And that I'm putting my attention over here. And so I think for women in particular, society has just basically said, if you're a size 0, you're great. And it's like, we're actually, thankfully, the pendulum's kind of balancing itself back out, where we're all looking at it like, no, this isn't, everybody is made, we're all wonderfully made. We're all children of God. And so each person is different, and honoring your body size and your body type is really what we should be doing, instead of, it's almost like worshiping an idol. Like, I want to be this size. It's like, you're almost putting that in front of your faith and what God has called you to be and do. And so, yeah, I think for me, it was very much a self-esteem piece that I tried to latch onto.
I've been watching and listening to different doctors that I follow on Instagram talking about Ozempic and the other weight loss drugs.
Yeah.
And saying that they feel like one of the side effects is going to be an increase in eating disorders.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So do you have any advice for someone who might have decided to take that path? How do you not let it go from that to that?
I think, yes, to your point, I think there's so many different drugs. There's so many different quick fixes, right? We're in a quick fix society. We don't want to do the work because the work's hard. And so I think one of the things I can say is, again, just think about the why. Why are you doing this? If it's to feel good, there's something going on inside of you that probably needs to come out. Binge eating disorder is actually the top eating disorder in the country. And that, again, is, it feels good to eat. It feels good to eat good food. And so, is that
to eat bad food?
Oh, yes.
It feels good.
Yes. All the things. I think, I would encourage, and I hope our physicians are encouraging people to seek therapy as well while they're taking these drugs. I know people that are on them, and I've asked them point blank, in a direct and compassionate way of, are you going to be on this forever? Have you thought about that? What does this look like? Because we have seen, and that's not to say it happens to everybody, but we have seen, specifically with bariatric surgery and different things, that when people get sick, they have a tear or whatever it might be. And our kids, I've worked with teenage kids who've gotten a gastric sleeve and, have had very, very difficult medical complications as a result. And so for me, when I see that, my heart is like, parents, seek residential treatment. It's expensive. Insurance will cover it. But at the end of the day, there is a function, there's a reason why your child is struggling or you're struggling. I would definitely seek out therapeutic resources along with taking the medication. Because again, it's one of those, if you stop the medication, are you really stopping the behavior? Like, we want to find like the underlying, we want to find the why rather than, we could do anything to stop a behavior, but we really want to find out the why so that we don't go back to it. And that's really, I think, where we should be, and where we're trying to go as a society versus let's put a Band-Aid on it, call it a quick fix and go for it. Yeah.
Because the feelings are, well, as a Christian life coach, I've learned that the feelings are just there. They're just under the surface, waiting to be felt. They're not going anywhere. They're just there.
Yes.
And if you don't address them, they will eventually make you sick.
Yep.
Or, they're going to demand to be acknowledged.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. feelings need to be felt. Rather,
Mhm.
they may not be fun or good. I
But
know
it
the
only,
movie, yeah, the movie Inside Out is the Inside Out 2 is coming out. And I think it's so wonderful that we're shedding a light on you don't have to be happy and joyful all the time. Like it's okay to not feel okay. And shedding
yes.
more light on that is beautiful.
And I also feel like we need to be careful that I think some people think emotions are all bad,
Yeah.
that there's there's more pleasant emotions and more negative ones, but they
Yeah.
all have a lesson. They all
Oh,
have a
yes.
message for us if we
Yes.
are willing to listen. Okay, so I feel like I need to ask, if you love someone who an has an eating disorder,
Mm.
where or so it can be binge eating,
Mhm.
it can be purging, it could be not eating.
Mhm.
Are
Yeah.
there other eating disorders besides?
There is, so we have, it's called avoidant restrictive food intake disorder. So it's RFID. And so we've seen that come out a little bit more about more of the kind of the sensory issues with eating certain foods, or we've seen a lot of kids specifically, or even adults that are on the autism spectrum that have struggled with
Okay.
RFID. So, for example, only eating specific foods like chicken nuggets, French fries, macaroni and cheese, hot dogs, like we call them like our brown and round foods or our white foods. If we have kids that are 100%, that's all they will eat because of sensory issues or disgust. So that has actually come up within the past 5 years as a diagnosis. Pica is not really, we don't see it a lot, but that is eating like non-nutritional foods. So like dirt, glass, nails, even eating ice chips. So if you have like an iron deficiency,
Yeah.
usually we'll look at a mineral deficiency first before we say, oh, this is straight pica. There are specific clinics for that. Let's see, like compulsive exercising has come up. It's a method of purging. So basically to rid yourself of calories. And then there's just, there's your kind of your atypical. So like atypical anorexia, where someone is still of like a normal weight, a healthy weight, but they are restricting to the point of, it's impacting their daily functioning. Like they can't do the daily things that they want to do because they're so focused on food. And so I would say the overarching theme with eating disorders is control. We're trying to control something because we feel out of control from something else. And so we can look at it. We can also look at it as a process addiction as well. I mean, we're trying, again, alcohol is one of drugs are one of those things too, where I can control what I'm putting in and what I'm taking out, but not the trauma that's I've endured as a child or adult or whatever it might be.
That's possibly the root cause.
Yeah.
Okay, so if someone needed residential
Mhm.
help
Yeah.
in the Midwest,
Yeah.
where would you suggest? Is
Mhm.
that, do you feel comfortable making
Yeah.
a
Oh,
suggestion?
absolutely. It's so I am happy to be that point of contact for people. So that's yeah.
Okay, so when we get finished, I'm going to be
Yeah.
asking you to send me your contact
Yeah.
information.
Yeah.
So you would make that available, or do
Oh,
you want people
yes.
to reach out to you privately?
You can make that available to anybody.
Okay,
Yeah. Yeah. And
okay.
I'm happy to. So the interesting thing is there's multiple facilities in the Midwest. It all depends. It all depends upon the family. There are locations, in the Chicagoland area, there's locations in Indiana. I would say for what I try to do is I conceptualize. So I get just a clinical picture, give me a summary of what's going on. And, do you prefer, a place out in the country, or do you prefer a place in the city? And the difference too is the milieus. So clients are different depending upon, so for example, if I have, a 12-year-old that's a young 12-year-old, young, mature 12-year-old may be suitable for one facility versus another, but they both take 12-year-olds. But the milieu may be completely different because there are more 16, 17-year-olds at one location versus another. Insurance is also an issue. So if families want to go in network, I have a background in insurance too, so I can talk the lingo with them.
Wow.
That's the hardest part because what's a deductible? What's an out-of-pocket maximum? What's a co-insurance? All those things, all those questions that parents are like, I just tell me where I need to go, what I need to do. So I can help out with that too. So yeah, it's an ever-changing landscape. So I'm so happy to give out my personal cell to families to help walk them through. Yeah,
Wow. Wow. Thank
absolutely.
you. Well, now I know why we're doing this, because this is going to help
Yes.
somebody. I'm sure of it. Okay. So you graduated from college, you've done all these different, um, lived in all these different cities, and you mentioned alcohol.
Mhm.
Do you mind sharing a little bit of that journey?
Yeah, yeah. So gosh, I started drinking at 14. Yeah,
So
yeah,
would you have been drinking in eighth grade?
yeah, yeah. So, and it
Wow.
wasn't, so one of the things that I feel strongly about is very much is just, taking the stigma away. Let's talk about it. Let's have a
Mhm.
conversation about it. I think the other thing is taking the perception of what we've seen the history of alcoholism look like, and kind of look at it a little bit differently too. So, we've one of my favorite shows is Intervention, and you see, if you know the show, you see a lot. It's usually the individual is drinking excessively by themselves, and it's a 24-hour occurrence, and that's what they're doing, that's what they're living for. And that's typically what we associate. We're like, oh, that's not me, I'm not an alcoholic. And I think for me, that was a big part of it. I was drinking in high school, Friday and Saturday nights, going out to a cornfield. That's what we did socially, that's what we
Doing what the
did.
kids do. Right.
Yes. And so, fast forward into college, it's socially acceptable. You're going out to parties, you're drinking in bars, you're doing all the things. And then you get to the workforce and it's like, oh, but that's not okay now. And you're like, wait a minute, but that was okay then. And for me, like I mentioned, I do have high functioning anxiety. And so I was around the C-suite. I was in leadership roles. I'm in a leadership role now. And the way that I was portraying myself and the way that I felt were incongruent. So again, had this self-deprecating behavior, these negative core beliefs about myself. I would go into work and I would work my butt off, and then I'd go home, and it didn't matter what day it was. It was, Bachelor Monday. Well, you're drinking wine with friends, or Taco or Tequila Tuesday, I'm having margaritas, or Wednesday, I played in a sand volleyball league at a bar. And so I'm drinking then. The difficulty, and again, looking at it now, I'm not saying you can't do those things, but for me, what I look at is the function of the behavior. I was doing it to mask what I felt inside. And so I didn't want the party to end. So I wasn't drinking in excess 24 hours at a time. It was the thrill of, oh, I'm drinking and I can't stop. I don't want to stop. And getting to the point where the next day, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm getting up for work, and instead of, being late for work, or, napping on the floor of my office, and not realizing how much of an effect it had on me. And I, could drink 7 days a week. I could drink when the sun's out, or when it's rainy, or when it's a good day or a bad day, or, I get a new job, or I lose my job, whatever it might be, you always find an excuse. And I think I knew there was an issue there when I would wake up and I would have the nausea, I would have the shakes, I would the hangover, just the hangover anxiety of, oh my gosh, what did I do? Where did I go? Waking up in the middle of a street, in the busy street in the middle of the night. Like, if
Oh,
there is a
wow.
God, like, if that doesn't make you a believer, I don't know what does.
Wow.
How I
Wow.
didn't die, how I didn't, all of those different things. Um, and I did, the dry Julys, I did the dry Januaries, because I knew
And
I'm
were
like,
you able to do it?
did. And you know what? It was so interesting because I could do it for 30 days, felt great. And then it was kind of like, okay, I did that. Now I'm going to go out with friends. And it was like, oh, yeah, I did it. It's fine. And it wasn't until I met my husband that I had someone with the most caring heart. He's direct but compassionate, and God gave me my husband to say. So on January 4th, 2019, we went out with friends. And I even said, we lived in downtown Indianapolis. And I even said, I don't know if I'm going to drink tonight. I'm just not feeling it. And he's like, okay, that's fine. And we went to a brewery for dinner. And for someone struggling, it's like, it's fine. I'll have one. It's not a big deal. One for me turned into, let's go to another bar. Let's go here. Let's go here. And in my head, we were moving to Madison from Indianapolis a couple weeks later. And I said, oh, we have to celebrate. And my husband's like, he was my boyfriend at the time. He's like, what is this? This isn't you, and I wake up the next day and I'm feeling just lethargic and feeling like, nauseous. And he was able, he had a conversation with me, and I was open to listening. When he said, I will stand beside you if you need some sort of help, but, we can do this together, and I'm here to help you. I'm here to support you. And January 5th, 2019 is my sobriety date, and I haven't looked back.
Wow. Look at you.
Yeah.
Wow. That's amazing. Oh my gosh. Thank goodness for a godly man.
Yes. Yes. And that's been my saving grace through all of this, is just, God placed him in front of me for a reason, and just said, here, you know what, this is who needs to be in your life right now. And it's been such an interesting journey too, because we both have grown so much together. And I can't, people ask me, they're like, oh, but do you miss it? And I don't. I really don't. I think about it and I'm like, how would I wake up? I have a 2.5-year-old that I love so dearly, but I'm exhausted most days anyways. How would I wake up hungover with this beautiful being next to me yelling mommy? Like there's just no way. So yeah, ever since then, it's, we have this very much, we're going to give direct and compassionate feedback, and we're honest with each other. And I tell him, we celebrate my sobriety. I have 2 birthdays. So I have my birthday on December 19th, and I also have my birthday on January 5th every year. And we celebrate twice. And it's a beautiful day.
Wonderful. So I've often wondered, people who are addicted, everybody seems to be addicted to something, including me.
Yes.
Crazy. But I've often wondered that the people who get addicted to drugs and alcohol, how much of a role trying to escape anxiety or trauma, or how much, because nobody wants, that's nobody's idea of what they want for their life.
Yeah. I would go on a limb and say a majority is it's an escape. It's a feel good. So going back to just the biological piece. So phones, it's a prime example. We see notifications and we're like, oh, I see a Facebook notification, or I see, I get a Snapchat, and you have a release of dopamine and it feels good. And that's what alcohol, that's what drugs do. That's what, disordered eating can do, is it gives you that instant feel good. Gambling is a prime example too. We keep doing it because it feels good until it doesn't. And that's, there's a really, really great book out right now called The Anxious Generation, which is about phones and how
Could you say it again? What is it?
It's called The Anxious Generation.
Okay, I'm going to write that down.
Yeah. And it's about phones. It is about how kids in particular right now that are growing up in this digital age are the most anxious they've ever been, because they have access to everything at all times. I remember in school, we talked about, oh, you're going to have to know long division because you're not going to have a calculator at your fingertips. Well, hello, we have Google. I don't even need a calculator anymore. Like, I have Google. I have, my Alexa. I can't say it too loud, or my, pen. So we have everything at our fingertips, and our kids in particular, their brains are not developed enough. They're, again, I'm a research person. So
it's okay.
They're executive
really smart listeners.
But our kids it's executive functioning. Their brains are not developed to be able to have this information at their fingertips. And so, for me, one of my passions is don't give your kid a cell phone. Don't give them an iPhone. If they need a phone, give them one of those like really just low-key burner phones that if they need to call, but they don't have the capacity to hold this information. And again, there's so much of this dopamine release that it feels good. So why not keep doing it?
Right. Okay. So access to that is creating anxious children, which will create more addicted people.
Yes.
Trying to find relief.
Yeah.
Wow. I was, last weekend, I took 2 of our granddaughters back home. They'd spent the week with us, and I needed to get gas. And I went into a gas station that they live 3 hours away. So I went into a gas station that Brad and I go to on our way to their house.
Yeah.
But I'd never go in because he's always driving.
Yes.
So I went in, and on the way to the restroom, there was it was not a big room, but it was filled with slot machines. The room was full of people. It was 11 o'clock on a Saturday morning. And one of the women was a gray-haired grandma. I just thought, that makes me so sad.
Yeah.
It was a beautiful day, and people were choosing to be in a gas station. In a
because
tiny little room.
they might win big. And it's that cycle. Oh my goodness. I feel for them. I'll pray for them. I mean, that is,
yes, it makes me feel really sad for them.
Yeah.
And also a little bit aggravated that our government is not doing things to seek the greater good. They're
that
legalizing
prevention
things.
aspect. Yeah.
Yes, they're legalizing things that are going to make it worse.
Yeah.
That's just my preaching on that.
Oh, I'm with you.
That and marijuana, and
yes.
I just, is it going to help people be more resilient, more able to actually live the life that they've been given or not? I don't know.
I know.
Okay, so I'm curious about AA. Has AA been part of your journey?
So it has not actually. So I've thought about it. I've thought about AA. I have a lot of friends, like we've walked some of the steps together, some of the 12 steps. For me, I actually, I started EMDR, eye movement reprocessing desensitization. It's a trauma therapy. That's been 5 years ago, actually, March of 2019. And that actually was super helpful for me. I had been in talk therapy. I'd been on the other side for, close to a decade. And that EMDR has helped me in those negative core beliefs. So it's very much, so we use tappers, we bring up traumatic events that have, weaved their way into my relationships. And has just helped me kind of see, okay, this is a negative core belief about myself. What about this is true? What do I feel in my body? I've also done a lot of work with polyvagal theory. So that's kind of something new that's come out with Dr. Stephen Porges, which is we always want to label our feeling with an emotion. Our body actually tells us, our body warns us about that feeling before we can name it. So it's like, it's coming more in tune with your body. Cause again, someone who struggled with eating and with alcohol, it's like, I was not in my body. I have an autoimmune disorder now. So I have celiacs. And so it's like, come on, God, let's keep, so it's one of those of just getting more in tune with my body. What am I feeling? How, being more intentional. And so, another great book that it's a hard book. It's a hard read, but The Body Keeps the Score. It's a heavy read.
Yes.
But that's been something that's been super helpful because again, I can say, hey, this is what my body is trying to tell me. My body's saying, this is danger, or this has been dangerous before, or I don't know if you listen to Mel Robbins. She has a great podcast.
Yes.
love her episode about her anxiety and how she labeled her anxiety as like a young child. Like you wouldn't tell a young child to like go away. You would say, hey, what are you trying to tell me? Let me listen to you. That's been
Mm.
so helpful to me where I'm like, okay, young Ashley, let me, what are you trying to tell me right now? And it's helped me kind of alleviate when I start to get in those moments of panic of like, I'm scared. Why am I scared? Let me ease into that. Let me dive into that a little deeper versus go away. I don't want to see you. You're infiltrating what's going on right now. Get out of here.
Mhm.
It's like, no, there's these messages that your body's sending you that you need to listen to. Yeah. It's all about
My
listening.
gosh. This is so good, and our time is flying by. Oh my gosh. Okay, so I want to switch gears
Yeah.
and to talk about your faith. So,
Yes.
when would you say, well, what do you love about Jesus?
Mm. What do I love about Jesus? I love that he died for me. He died for me. I've lived with this shame. I've lived with shame of my sobriety. Honestly, didn't come out about my sobriety until last year when,
Oh, it's only been a year
yeah.
since.
So
Okay,
yeah. So I had been
I
sober
saw your
for 4
Facebook
years.
post.
Yeah. So I had been sober for 4 years. My husband, I kind of grappled with, should I tell people about this? When I would go out with friends, we'd go out to dinner and my thing is sparkling water with the lime, put it in a little funny glass and we're good. But people would
You
ask me,
just want to feel special,
yeah, people would ask
right?
me, are you pregnant? And it's like, no. And I remember my husband saying, that's part of who you are. Talk about it. Let's do it. And
Mhm.
so I remember posting it on Facebook, posting it on LinkedIn, and just the outpouring of support. And now I'm like, this is a big part of me. And so the shame that's been lifted from that, the freedom in Christ, just knowing that he's in control. I'm not in control. It's the story's written. There's reasons why I'm in the places I'm in. There is, instead of feeling ashamed about my story and trying to hide it, hiding is the kryptonite to healing is like one of my favorite phrases
Oh, I'm
because
going to write that down.
yeah, because we can't fully heal if we're not fully seen and known. And I think for me, that's just knowing that Christ, like you have a plan for me and living in God's worth and in the truth every day is just like, oh, there's such a freedom about that I can just, the anxiety goes away. And I'm just like, I'm here, I'm free. And I, it's just, I weep during church because I'm like, I love this. This is like where I
Mhm.
feel the most connected to the Holy Spirit. Just he's working through
Oh,
me. I love it.
that's wonderful.
Yeah.
So are you far enough along on your faith journey that you have like spiritual practices that you
Yes, yes. So I have the book upstairs. I believe her name's Marissa Horvath. I think is her name. She does these beautiful. They're scriptures towards women. So they're little daily devotional. So I have a book called You Got This. And it's like it's a daily devotional where basically it's a scripture and then she talks about something in average daily life and then it's like you got this, you can go out and take on the world. And so a lot of it's about anxiety as a woman in leadership of whatever God throws at whatever's thrown at you today. God's got this, you've got the tools and skills to be able to get through it. It's interesting you say that. I have like a daily meditation that I do actually every day at 4 o'clock before 4 o'clock Eastern, before I pick up Jack, where I'm just being still, Maybe it's a walk. Maybe it's a meditation. Maybe it's just sitting outside on my porch swing, just like, okay, this is my, like from worker bee to mama bear, like this is my release. When I'm traveling for work, it's just like, it's a moment of just like going to Target, like a mindless Target run where it's just like, okay, I'm just being here. Um,
Mhm.
I think we all, gosh, I feel God all day, every day when I just say, okay, God, what are you trying to tell me? And I also, it's interesting too, that I've come to this place of, if I have a difficult person in front of me, or beside me, my thought is, God, is this my one more? Is this my one more for the week? My one more to like lead to you versus, oh, this is so frustrating. It's like turning it into, I'm the type of person when I'm on a plane, don't bother me. But like the person who does, I'm thinking in my head, God, is this my one more for today? Did you place them next to me so that we could talk about Christ's love?
I love that question. That
Yeah.
gave me goosebumps. So I know for me, that was a good question to consider. Is this my one more?
Yeah.
Oh,
Like, is this
that's
the one
awesome.
more that I'm leading today? And that has truly just kind of changed my outlook and perspective, especially when it's a difficult day of like, oh, wait, God, I see you. This has got to be the one more that I'm leading to you.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. I love that.
Yeah.
Okay. So I need to have you back on here again
Yeah.
because I'm not nearly done
Aw.
asking you. You know so much. But I want to close with this question.
Yeah.
So, what would you tell a 14-year-old girl
Mm,
who's feeling the things that you were feeling?
mm, yeah. Ooh, you're not alone. You're not alone. Um, Talk about it. Tell somebody. Tell a trusted friend. Tell a trusted adult. Um, when I talk to families, I think about when they say, because a lot of times when they get to me, it is take my kid. I don't know. I don't care where it is. And I think to myself, this is your child. And then I also say, I was that kid. I was that kid that was very deeply feeling, that felt very restricted to what I could feel when I could feel it. And I would say, just talk about it. Tell somebody. Um, and just get it out there, make it known if you're feeling those suicidal thoughts. I would also tell people that it is okay to talk about it, right? We have this misperception of, if I ask somebody if they're feeling okay and they say no, I've led them to suicide. I've led them to X, Y, and Z. That's not the case, really. It's actually the opposite. If we talk about it, we create a dialogue around it, and to say, I'm here for you, that's all we need. We just need that person to say, I'm here for you. I'm with you. I will walk this journey with you. Whatever you need, I'm here to support you. And I want to loop in a trusted adult, a professional helper, because another thing I tell parents is, this is bigger than you, mom. This is bigger than you, dad. This is 100%. This is not your fault. No matter how much you want to beat yourself up about it, this is not your fault. You could have done everything perfectly, and this is still part of it. This resilience that we're building is going to create a joyful life for your child. And so talk about it. Talk about it in your homes, talk about it around your dinner tables, make it known, release the stigma. And if you have to seek help, you have to seek help. I will say it, we all need our own therapist in some way, shape, or form. We need an objective point of view to help guide us through, especially in the chaotic world that we live in. So yeah,
Oh, that's
just make
so
it known.
good. That's so
Yeah.
good. Hearing you say that makes me think back to my teaching days, and
Mm.
I have some regrets because I was so focused on those ISAT scores,
Yeah.
those Illinois, that I
Yeah.
probably missed some
Mm.
red flags that were being waved in front of my face.
Mm.
So
Mm.
if you were
Yeah.
waving a red flag at me and I did not see it, or a
Uh-huh.
white flag or whatever,
Yeah. Oh.
I'm sorry. I'm
Oh.
sorry.
You know what? It's one of those where I think about it as a mom right now. I wouldn't have thought about it had it not been in front of me, right? It's one of those where we don't think about it till it's there. And I think for teachers, especially, it's hard. You get kids more than families, and what you do, what you don't do, it's hard. We're going through this life together, and again, it's chaotic. And I think what we can do is just love on our kids so much and give them that space of transparency of, I'm going to love you exactly as you are, where you are. And they'll come, they'll come to you. Again, my husband was one of those examples. He came at me non-judgmentally. And it was one of those where I was like, it's time. We need to do this together. And it wasn't a big blow up of, oh my gosh, now what do we do? Where do we go? How do we navigate this? It was, we're doing this together and let's just take it one step at a time. And so it's hard. It's really hard.
What a good reminder of how God created us to be in community.
Yeah.
And that's how we get our healing too.
Yes. Yeah. We find it in community. Addiction finds us in isolation. We find our healing in community. I love that. Yes.
That is a great quote. I'm going to be writing that down after. Okay. So let's end on this. What are you loving right now?
I am loving simplicity. I'm living in this era of simplicity. Just take away all the things and just let me be in the moment. We actually got back from vacation yesterday, my husband, my son and I, and we go out to the mountains in Tennessee. We go out to the Smoky Mountains and we drive my father-in-law's Jeep. So it's a manual transmission. It's a 2-door Jeep. And so we have to simplify our packing. I'm a just in case packer. I'm like, just in case it rains, just in case I get a headache, it snows, I want a new pair of shoes. My husband he's lovely. Love him. He's like, Ashley, people live there. So if it rains, they have places to get umbrellas. If you have a headache, I'm sure they have a drugstore, I'm sure they have CVS. So I have to like put myself in that. Okay. So with this trip, I mean, I could only pack one bag with my son's things and my things. And so the simplicity of that was so beautiful I was almost like a competition of like, I stuffed everything in one bag. I feel freedom and we're going to enjoy what we're doing. We stayed an extra day. I did not have an extra outfit. We did it. We made do. We found a little shop and, got what we needed. But I'm loving just living in the simplicity of knowing God's got this. He's got this. And whatever the path may lead, wherever I may go, there's a reason we reconnected. There's a reason I'm loving my job. Like there's a reason I'm a mom of a 2.5-year-old. And like, this is my favorite age. I say that every time, but I'm like, this is my favorite.
I love that. I love that thought. This is my favorite age. I think that a lot myself too. Okay. I have to ask you about the coffee pot behind you.
Yes.
I think it's a coffee pot. Is that like a pour over pot?
Yes. So yes, so we live in a historic home. Our house was built 1834. So we're very much,
goodness.
Yeah. So we found an antique coffee pot. So a lot of the things our home especially was on, it was on the Christmas tour of homes here in Madison in 2021, right after I gave birth to my son. So a month later, all of our things, I mean, really are family heirlooms. My husband's grandfather, he was legally blind. He was a woodworker. So a lot of the things in our home he made, a lot of the things that we refurbished or in an antique store. Yeah. And so the pictures are of Madison, of different places in Madison. So I can't talk about it enough. It's such a wonderful place and it's where we call home. So yeah.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Well, Ashley, thank you so much for talking to us today and for being open and vulnerable about your struggles and how God's carried you through. And I know that this is going to be a blessing and a lifeline to somebody. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Susan. And thank you, everyone. And yeah, if anyone wants to reach out or needs help, I take a full non-judgmental approach. You can call me, text me, email me anytime, and I'm happy to help. Thank you.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'll be in touch.
All right. Thanks, Susan. Bye-bye.